Sorry about that, guys. I swear, within a couple of weeks, I am going to be off doing these lives on the phone. I promise you. Check one. Are we good? Are we good? 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, we were talking Shields Marshall. We were talking Mayor Bumgardner. And so, yeah, I want to pretty much pick up where we left off with as little delay as possible. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure that we're good on this live. Can you guys hear me okay? Sorry about that. Imagine my surprise, like you're doing a live and then all of a sudden, the screen that you're doing it on just goes totally black, right? And so, yeah, that one totally took me by surprise. But again, within a couple of weeks, we should be off of doing the lives on this device. And hopefully there are no more hiccups like that. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa Tucker's in the house. And I saw Benjamin was in the house too. I hope he jumps back on as well. Yeah, no, Brendan Jackson was in the house, NMTK. So yeah, let's see. I just want to make sure that I'm seeing what I need to see to make sure that we're good. Yes, okay, so we are okay. Yeah, I hope as many people come back in. Jay Foreman, hey, you just missed the live cutting out just a moment ago, but we are good. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, we were rocking and rolling for about a good 15 minutes and then it just cut off. So yeah, I tried to throw the new link up ASAP. We were discussing, we were briefly discussing Eubank Benn, Fundora Ocampo. Rest in peace to Eder Jofre, the only Brazilian boxer to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame, just passed away earlier this week and passed away at 86. A 2-division champion, and so we were talking a little bit about him. We were just getting into Shields Marshall and Michaela Mayer, Alicia Bumgardner, and so yeah, and I saw that there were a lot of comments at the time that I want to get to. And if you did have a comment, by the way, that I did not get to, try dropping it again, and I'll try to get to it the second time around. But, all in all, when you look at the boxing landscape right now, I feel like this is one of those weird weeks where you really just scratch your head. And, boxing is so unlike other sports where in the NBA, if you're talking, Premier League soccer, NFL, you have leagues that almost predetermine what the schedule is going to look like. And the participants, the players, if you will, they get paid to go along for the ride. Boxing is unlike any of that, and it's unlike even like mixed martial arts because boxers are essentially independent contractors. And for every fight that's made, especially when a fighter has some say in the matter, they are basically taking one-off business opportunities. And so you have to look at every fight making possibility as just that. Like we fans, we look at it like how can this fighter A and fighter B not come together? Like it just seems like it has to happen. But it's almost like it's every man for himself or every woman for herself when you're making these fights. And so a lot of the news that broke over the past several days when pertaining to boxing, it was more unfortunate than fortunate, I felt. Yes, there were some interesting fights that were announced. Like Janibek, Alim Kanuli has his next opponent set. It's Denzel Bentley, who, not too long ago lost to Felix Cash. And to be frank, I think he is going to get stopped by Alim Kanuli, Janibek, the boogeyman of the middleweights. But that's his next opponent. But again, okay, let's just get right into Spence Crawford because I feel like the news was too big to ignore. So Max Kellerman has Max on Boxing. It's his show on ESPN. Comes on like every couple of weeks or so. He's interviewing Mike Coppinger, one of the better news breakers in the boxing game. Another one is Michael Benson. If you want to look on Twitter and see what the latest is and who's breaking what fight news, Michael Benson usually has it going on. So Mike Coppinger was on Max Kellerman, and he basically said, when asked the question by Max, so where are we with Spence Crawford? A couple weeks ago, you, Mike Coppinger, said that this fight was basically all but agreed upon, everything but the signatures. So where are we with that fight? Here we are 2 weeks later, and we don't have the fight. Mike Coppinger basically said, we are further away from that fight happening than ever before. And he said that the reason was that Errol Spence Jr. is the A-side fighter. He's with PBC. PBC has like 90% of the elite talent in that division. Terrence Crawford has been spending his whole professional career, almost his whole career, at Top Rank, who has the deal with ESPN. His contract ran up after the Sean Porter fight, Crawford's very last fight, which now is almost a year ago. And so he's basically coming over to PBC to try to challenge the guy who's holding the other then 2 belts. Now he's got 3 of the 4 belts, Errol Spence Jr. And this is the super fight. If there was a fight in the whole sport of boxing, in any division, that most fans want to and need to see to settle that score, it's Spence Crawford. Well, what's happening now is Errol Spence gets the lion's share of the money, even though you could argue that their resumes are right here. You know, you could argue that they should be getting paid about 50-50 because it's Terrence Crawford, who's been a, undisputed light welterweight, super middleweight champion, had all the belts there, and was a champion at 135, now coming to fight Spence at 147. And then on the Errol Spence side, he's getting 65% of the purse. Terrence Crawford is agreeing to 35% of the purse. But it's not even a guarantee that Terrence Crawford's getting. So he's not signing for a specific amount of money that is to be guaranteed. What they are telling him is you make a percentage off the net. Off the net is, basically after expenses, you got the gross, then the expenses, then the net is down here. So the net's almost always going to be significantly lower than the gross amount. And Terrence Crawford is supposed to, agree to that. It's bogus. That's bogus to begin with. For instance, if somebody's like an actor or somebody's like in the entertainment industry and they say you're going to make a percentage of the net and that's it, those are basically the bogus record label contracts that people had been getting screwed by for the past several decades of the music industry, right? So it's one thing if you're going to say, you, Terrence Crawford, you're going to take a percentage of the net. It's another thing if you then say, and this is what Mike Coppinger is reporting, that they are not even going to expose what the books look like. They're not even going to give a look at what the accounting looks like on that side. So he doesn't even know what he's getting a net of. It's almost like he's just supposed to get handed a check and say thank you without even knowing, okay, I made a percentage off of what amount and what were the expenses and how can we get this itemized? I don't want to get too deeply into the financials. All I want to say is that type of business practice that PBC is reportedly trying to pull on Terrence Crawford, it's really unbelievable. I mean, I've seen a couple Eddie Hearn Matchroom interviews since, and he's laughing. He's talking about how he stopped short of using the word corrupt. I bet if you asked Bob Arum, he wouldn't think twice, and he would just say, yeah, those bastards are corrupt. But look, and I want to be careful with my language, but that is not on the up and up. And nobody who has the type of resume and accomplishments that Terrence Crawford does to this point should agree to something like that. So it looks like that is what is currently holding the biggest, or maybe not the biggest, but the best fight in boxing. That's what's holding it up. And that is totally unfortunate. And that you begin to wonder how many people agree to that BS. Like how many less powerful fighters just have to, at the end of the day, because they're in the sport of boxing and there are only so few revenue opportunities for fighters, I'm sure that some fighters just have to shrug their shoulders and just take it and just agree to it. And that's not right. And the more that this gets exposed, the more I feel like PBC is going to have to capitulate and show some level of transparency to get the fight done. Otherwise, it's a terrible look for PBC and to Al Heyman. And it's even worse that the head of the whole operation never, ever, ever gives interviews. It's just a terrible look altogether. Growth through calisthenics in the house. Thank you for coming through. You're right, and you're right, Benjamin Tucker. It does smell fishy. It's super unfortunate because when people look, I don't like to argue this promoter is better than that promoter, or these guys are more fair than these guys, or these guys are blocking fights or ducking. I don't like getting too much into that. I like talking about the fights that are made. I like comparing fighters' skills and so forth. But when you get something that's this egregious, you have to bring it to the forefront. I just still hope that the fight gets made. I hope that there is enough public pressure and, quite frankly, financial pressure for PBC to get this done. And maybe, just maybe, the reason why they've been able to pull off some of the fights where they're able to pay the A-side fighter much more than Bob Arum's able to pay his, or Eddie Hearn is able to pay his. Maybe the reason they've been able to get away with it is because they could have potentially been hiding the books and not being forthright and transparent with the people who are in contract with them. I don't know, like it's very it seems very unethical. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, you're right. Broner has probably done that his whole career. Yeah, I wonder who's been representing Adrian Broner. And maybe that it took somebody who came in from the outside. Like, maybe that's why they never wanted to work with Terrence Crawford in the first place, right? Maybe that's why they were even willing to let Sean Porter leave PBC to go over to Top Rank to fight Terrence Crawford. It's like better than Terrence Crawford and his representatives coming over here and trying to shine a light and audit what we're doing. Look, when we're left with this, we're only left to speculate. So I don't even feel I'm out of bounds for saying these things. Yeah, NMTK. I agree. And the thing is, the messed up part about it is when PBC entered the game, they were supposed to be the ones to essentially democratize boxing, where they bring the Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter level fight to like Fox or CBS. That was like their mantra. They wanted to grow the boxing base, which, I mean, who's doing that right now? I can't even think of who's really growing boxing. I think that Bob Arum and Top Rank are in the best position to grow boxing because they're not like on a streaming service like DAZN, and it's on ESPN, which, most people, at least here in the States, have ESPN. So it seems like there's an opportunity there to grow boxing if ESPN and Disney gave a damn about boxing. I get the feeling they don't because of how suppressed it seems and how hidden the boxing action is. If you go into the ESPN app, sometimes you won't even find a fight that's happening that day on the main menu. So I get the feeling ESPN doesn't, give a damn about boxing. But I'm just saying, it seems like Top Ranks, because they have a deal with ESPN, is best positioned to grow the sport to a larger audience. That's what PBC was supposed to be. But these days, it seems like they are doing the absolute opposite of that. And I think that it's because of financial pressure. A lot of things have changed. COVID happened. I don't think that boxing is thriving economically. Just even before COVID, I don't think boxing was doing well financially. Like, look, when Canelo got signed, remember, before COVID, when Canelo was still with Golden Boy and he got signed to like $40 million per fight, I'm thinking they have to be overpaying Canelo. And then Triple G signed a deal with DAZN for like $200 million. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, where's anybody going to get all this money? So when COVID hit, it was only a matter of time before Golden Boy realized, like, damn, there's no way we could pay Canelo. And so that was bound to they were either going to have to renegotiate or part ways, But I think that boxing's been hurting economically for some time. And I think that the boxing apparatus, meaning the promoters, and maybe Bob Arum maybe he's right this whole time. I mean, people look at him as being a little cheap with some of his fighters and kind of underpaying or like not letting a big fight happen because they demand too much money, right? Fighter A and fighter B, you got to pay them both. Maybe Bob Arum actually has the soundest, economic strategy. He's just kind of running it in a mom and pop's business type of way. I can't really speak on Golden Boys too much, other than the Golden Boy went from being an empire to kind of being a niche player in the game too. But yeah, PBC has totally gone from one extreme all the way to the other extreme, and that's unfortunate. Yeah, so speaking of PBC fighters, did you guys catch the news? What is happening basically with the at 126 and 130 featherweight and the 130 pound division that Shakur Stevenson just didn't make weight and just left the division. First of all, Joe Cordina, who just won a title at 130, the IBF just stripped him of his belt because he was preparing to fight and defend his title against Shavkat Rakhimov. He hurt his hand in training, had to withdraw from the fight. The IBF just stripped him. And I'm thinking, that seemed a little abrupt, right? Like, I see people like get hurt in training camp and then they, postpone the fight date or something like that. But the IBF just cold stripped Joe Cordina. And so what happens in the wake of that? They immediately pivot and they make the guy that Cordina was going to fight, Shavkat Rakhimov, who's, I think he has yet to lose. He fought to a draw with Joseph Jojo Diaz, but I think he's still undefeated. He is now going to fight Zelfa Barrett. Those of you who watch a lot of British boxing might be familiar with Zelfa Barrett. I look at him as being a very talented fighter. Look, I saw him less than 2 years ago beat Kiko Martinez with ease via decision. Zelfa Barrett is one of these names that's kind of been under the radar. He's been on a lot of quality undercards, but just beating his opponents handedly. He's about to fight for the vacant title against Shavkat Rakhimov, the title that they just stripped Joe Cordina, matchroom fighter, by the way, stripped him of. So Eddie Hearn's hope is that when Cordina gets healthy, he'll then be able to fight the winner of Rakhimov versus Barrett. So that's like on one side of the equation. You've got a new entry, because remember, the WBO and the WBC belts just got vacated by Shakur Stevenson as he's going to 135. So one of those belts, the WBC, Rey Vargas, who just won the WBC featherweight belt just a couple months ago against Mark Magsayo, he's already leaving 126 to go to 130. So instead of becoming a unifying belts at 126, which, man, it's kind of unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen Rey Vargas fight Emmanuel Navarrete or one of the other, very good fighters at 126. Mauricio Lara, even though he doesn't have a belt, but he did just make his next fight today, which we'll get to. But, Josh Warrington is currently the IBF champ at 126. So Rey Vargas won't be fighting any of them. He won't be fighting, Gary Russell Jr., unless it's going to be at 130. But basically, he's already in a situation since that 130 belt. Remember, he just became the 126 pound champ. Going to 130, there's a vacant WBC belt there and a vacant WBO, both vacated by Stevenson. But he's going to be fighting for that vacant WBC belt in his next fight against O'Shaquie Foster. So that's going to determine who the next WBC 130 pound champ is in the wake of Shakur Stevenson beating Oscar Valdez, who had held that WBC belt before that, and then Miguel Berchelt before that. So yeah, just a lot of shakeups belt-wise. But like my opinion on the Joe Cordina situation, I feel like that was a premature stripping. It just seems like there's no continuity or consistency in terms of what the rules are in terms of getting injured before a fight and then getting stripped. I mean, Cordina just won the belt like a few months ago. Meanwhile, you've got Leo Santa Cruz, who is still holding the Super WBA champion status at 126, a division that he has not competed in for over 3 years. Leo Santa Cruz hasn't fought in the division that he holds a belt in over 3 years. Yet Joe Cordina gets stripped a couple months after winning the belt because he hurt his hand training he was about to defend the title. So it's not like he wasn't looking to fight or that he was turning down opportunities. So yeah, that's a little, look, I get it. The IBF does have a tendency to be a little bit more by the book. They're more strict. Like when they say you've got a mandatory, you've got a mandatory. The WBA, WBC, they are more like, hey, let's pick and choose how we apply the rules, So that just kind of is what it is. By the way, Leo Santa Cruz is about to consolidate that WBA belt. It looks like they are renegotiating Leo Santa Cruz versus Leigh Wood, which is what they were initially trying to make before they dissolved that idea. And then they were trying to make Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara, which I would have loved to have seen. That was one of my favorite fights on the calendar. But since Leigh Wood hurt his bicep, that fight, it looked like it was going to be rescheduled, Leigh Wood and Mauricio Lara. But no, Mauricio Lara wants to fight now. So Mauricio Lara is going to fight Jose Sanmartin, who's won his last several fights. His last loss was a couple years ago against Emmanuel Navarrete, one of the best, or I kind of think he's the best right now at 126. He's not a perfect fighter by any stretch, but Navarrete, if I had to pick a number one guy in featherweight, it would be Navarrete today. That's why I would have loved to have seen Rey Vargas versus Navarrete. But yeah, Mauricio Lara is going to fight Jose Sanmartin, no title on the line, and Leo Santa Cruz is going to be fighting Leigh Wood. So that's how that's, and by the way, that Santa Cruz versus Leigh Wood fight, that is to consolidate the Super WBA title and then the regular WBA title. The difference being, obviously, with the regular, that's the belt you have to defend. I guess super belt, you're able to just hold on to that for as long as you want without fighting anybody in the division, as Leo Santa Cruz has done basically for the last 3 years. Not a direct knock to Santa Cruz. He has fought in the last 3 years, just not in the division where he still holds the title. He's obviously had a great career. I just think that it's bogus application of the rules in that case by the WBA. But I'm not, on its surface, the matchup between Santa Cruz and Leigh Wood, I'm not mad at that fight. I mean, I actually want to see it. I would have rather see Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara. Fernando Ontiveros, thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Jay Foreman, instead of this being a good thing for boxing, it's a black eye, talking about the PBC stuff. It's clear that PBC doesn't give a damn about public opinion. That's true. And here's the thing. If you're going to, and I'm shifting gears just for a moment to make this point. With the PBC situation, if you've got a fighter who is a good self-promoter, Floyd Mayweather, right? You don't need an Al Heyman to come out and do interviews like he's like Eddie Hearn or something, or even Bob Arum. But he doesn't come out, he being Al Heyman doesn't come out at all. In fact, if you try to Google a picture of him, you'll find the same two pictures of Al Heyman. I can't think of too many individuals except for maybe like bank owners or something like that who are that, hidden. It's very rare, especially in the entertainment realm. But if you got a fighter like Floyd Mayweather, who's a great self-promoter, okay, let him do the legwork. Promotion-wise, it still works out. Look, I barely knew who Leonard Ellerbe was throughout much of Floyd's career. I knew, okay, he's always like Floyd's right-hand man, but what exactly does he do, right? But I didn't need to know who Ellerbe was, because Leonard Ellerbe he never had to step out in front of the mic and talk on behalf of Floyd Mayweather. I'm not saying that fighters have to be good self-promoters. All I'm saying is this whole, hey, our promotional company doesn't say anything, doesn't really address the public, doesn't answer the public's like outcries or grievances, none of that. Like, that doesn't work if the fighters are staying silent too. And Errol Spence, it's by choice. He's not a big self-promoter. Okay, whatever. But if you're going to be silent, and your operation is going to be silent about it, look, I wouldn't be mad. They know that the public doesn't have the appetite to boycott. I wish the public did have an appetite to boycott. Look, I'm a huge boxing fan, but I would say straight up, don't watch the next 2 months of PBC fights. Don't watch the next 2 months, period. Until either Spence Crawford or Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, these guys almost got into a fight in a club. And we can't make the fight on paper, and they are at least saying that they want to fight each other. If they are banking on the same lack of political will that politicians bank on, saying the public will never make us pay for it or will never hold us to our promises. They won't, if they're mad about something for a month, they won't stay mad about it for the next month. They'll move on because life moves fast. That's what I think the powers that be in the boxing game believe too. And PBC, to me, they are the biggest violators of public trust right now. And like, yeah, it's really frustrating. But they're banking on the fact that the next time they announce a fight that we're gonna watch, we're all gonna tune in. But look, I wouldn't be opposed to doing like a temporary boycott until they start acting right, just as a business. And I don't mean as a business in terms of them making a profit. I mean as a business, as in them not playing the boxing audience and the boxing fans for fools. I mean, we are about, as stubborn a fan base as it gets. But you really, at a point, feel like your fanhood and fanship are being toyed with. So, yeah, that's where we are right now with PBC and Spence versus Crawford. And then, yeah, so moving on from that whole 126 to 130 pound landscape and how that whole shakeup of titles from, Joe Cordina being stripped, Rakhimov versus Zelfa Barrett being next. I was going to say Monty Barrett. Anybody remember that name back in the day? Son of Apollo's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, Rod Rivas. Yeah, TJ, am I dropping any other previews this week? Yeah, okay, so I just dropped the Eubank versus Benn. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be dropping the Sebastian Fundora versus Carlos Ocampo, which I actually do expect to be a competitive fight, even given all 6'5" of Sebastian Fundora. I think this is going to be a competitive fight. Ocampo, and I said this at the top of the hour, when I first saw that is who Sebastian Fundora's next opponent is, I'm like, damn, it's not, Tony Harrison. It's not, Julian J. McWilliams is kind of, falling off a bit. Hey, I think I'm taking Fernando in that fight, but I'm not doing an actual fight preview on that one, but thanks for bringing that one up. And let me know if you have any parlays going on. When it comes to the bets, you've been money. Yeah, so I want to know who you're betting on in your next parlay. But yeah, when I first on the surface looked at Sebastian Fundora versus Ocampo, I thought that it was going to be a bit of a mismatch because I basically knew Ocampo from being the guy who got knocked out in the first round by Spence Jr. It wasn't just after Spence beat Kell Brook for the IBF title, his first title win, Spence Jr., but it was right after the fight after that. So Spence beat Kell Brook for the belt, and then he defended it against Lamont Peterson, stopped him. Then he fought Carlos Ocampo, knocked him out in the first round. And then his next fight was against Mikey Garcia. So that's what I knew Carlos Ocampo from. But since that knockout loss to Spence Jr., Ocampo has won his next 12 fights. And he's actually looked really good from a sweet science standpoint to a selective power punch and mix it up standpoint. I think he's going to be formidable against Sebastian Fundora. Not to say I think he's going to win or even go the distance, but I feel like there's a greater than 50% chance that he does make it the 12-round distance against the towering Inferno. By the way, how appropriate of a nickname is that for Sebastian Fundora? Not just because of his height, but because of his punch volume. Towering Inferno. I love it. Yeah, so TJ said Carlos Adames versus Juan Montiel. Is that taking place this weekend? Let me know in the comments. Because Carlos Adames just beat Sergey Derevianchenko. Juan Montiel just fought that competitive fight against Jermall Charlo, the one where, Jermall Charlo kept hitting the guy, but the guy kept on coming forward, putting more and more pressure on Charlo, where you basically saw Jermall Charlo look super uncomfortable in that fight, right? In the second half of the fight against Montiel. Montiel's very durable. Now, he wasn't so durable a couple years ago, or I'd say 3 to 4 years ago, when he got knocked out, like in the third round against Jaime Munguia. Munguia trashed Juan Macias Montiel. But yeah, Adames versus Montiel, I like that fight. Now, my gut feeling would say Carlos Adames. I think he is near elite. I want to stop short of saying elite because I don't know where Derevianchenko is right now, but that was an impressive win, and that wasn't a controversial win for Adames. He straight up beat Derevianchenko. In fact, I thought Adames beat Derevianchenko more convincingly than Daniel Jacobs did, and more convincingly than Triple G did. Not more convincingly than Jermall Charlo did, but right around that same level. So yeah, Adames is for real. And he's been basically saying all of these guys are like, all these 160 pounders are avoiding me, basically. So he's stuck with what he's stuck with. But at least he's got a formidable opponent. And, you know, hopefully they just put on a good fight so it kind of, you know, the tide lifts both ships, you know? But yeah, I'm going to go with Adames, but probably via decision. Aside from that Montiel KO loss to Munguia, he looks pretty durable. Let's see. Oh, so it is this weekend. Yeah. And you're right. He did kind of fade against Derevianchenko, but I thought he banked a lot of rounds in that first half of the fight. That, by the way, was on the Gervonta Davis versus Isaac Cruz undercard. But also, you know, Sebastian Fundora's sister, Gabriela Fundora, she's actually must watch too. And she's going to be on that Fundora undercard. I said that Fundora undercard like she's not also a Fundora. By the way, is it even worth getting into the Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua drama at this point? Like, I feel like that has been so frustrating. Well, look, I'm going to stop short of frustrating because that was a fight nobody thought we were going to get that like a month ago. Even like a couple weeks ago, we were still skeptical even when both guys expressed interest in fighting each other this year. But long story short, Eddie Hearn, it's gotten to a point where Eddie Hearn is coming out making statements, and he gives pretty entertaining interviews. He talks with Ak and Barak. He talks with IFL TV. Pretty good interviews, but he's basically, you know, each side is accusing the other of basically either not picking up the phone or not reaching out or not turning in the contract soon enough. It's just let's let them handle that situation. We don't have a fight. I wouldn't totally rule it out, but if they're going to try to plan this for like early December, it's going to have to happen and be made official in the next week to 2 weeks. So we'll just see how that plays out. I'm not going to put too much emotional stock into that, though. Because, again, it's not a fight that I expected, or, you know, especially after AJ's loss to Usyk. I didn't think that on short notice, all of a sudden, he's going to be fighting the Gypsy King in December. So, I mean, that would just be a Christmas coming early if we do get it. But let's put that one aside for right now. Even though when the trash talk first started, Gypsy King, you know, Tyson Fury was pretty entertaining in his Instagram stories. Oh, wow. Muhammad Shafiq, first of all, thank you for coming through. He's got Sebastian Fundora knocking Carlos Ocampo out in 3 rounds. Yo, if he finishes him I have a hard time seeing Ocampo go out like that. Put it like this. Even in Ocampo's one loss, and it was years ago, to Errol Spence Jr., 1 division below, right? If you look at that first round, he tagged Spence a few times. Not up top, but to the body. I mean, that whole fight was like 80% punches to the body. Like, they were basically just trying to break each other. And Errol Spence just broke him to where he like went down and he was like laying on his back, just writhing in pain. Not too dissimilar from Oscar De La Hoya getting dropped by Bernard Hopkins with that body shot. I think Carlos Ocampo is going to do all right in there with Fundora. Yeah, exactly. I think that this is going to be a lot more like Sergio Garcia's spirited effort against Fundora, which did go the distance. Unanimous decision win for Fundora, but Fundora was getting tagged. It felt like Fundora was getting tagged nearly as much as Sergio Garcia was getting tagged. Now, Sergio Garcia has since lost. He lost to Tony Harrison via decision. And that fight, by the way, not Tony Harrison versus Sergio Garcia, but Fundora versus Sergio Garcia. I think that was also on that Gervonta Davis versus Isaac Cruz undercard, right? The same undercard that had Derevianchenko versus Adames. But yeah, Sergio Garcia fought Fundora very competitively. Here's the thing. I kind of feel like Erickson Lubin fought the wrong strategy against a guy like Fundora. The thing is, with most guys who have like a superior reach, right? Again, 154-pounder at 6'5". I can't think of anything else like it. Paul the Punisher Williams was an anomaly, but it was nowhere near that, that much of a physical outlier. Most guys who have that reach want to keep you there. Not Fundora. He wants you right here. He wants to shorten his punches up so he can throw uppercuts with both hands and hooks with both hands. It's it's really interesting because it makes him more of a easy target to hit. But it just looks like the volume that he puts on you and the angles that he's taking, yeah, it's I don't want to say it's like Navarrete if Navarrete was 6'5", but it seems like it's almost as unique a challenge as Navarrete's activity level and angles are for their opponent. But yeah, I do think that Ocampo is going to be pretty competitive. By the way, does anybody here think that Fundora beats Jermell Charlo, the undisputed champion at 154? I would be inclined to say no, but I would qualify it with a but like look, I'll stick with no for now. But again, I picked Erickson Lubin to stop Sebastian Fundora. And is Lubin just not as good as we thought he was? Or does he have a suspect chin? I mean, he got dropped early. But, he got stopped at the end of the ninth against Fundora. He got dropped early, like in the second or third round as well against Fundora. And he got hurt badly a couple fights prior against Jason Rosario. Rosario had Erickson Lubin badly wobbled as well. So, wait, TJ doesn't think that Sebastian Fundora beats Brian Castano either. I'd be very interested to see that one. I would really want to see Fundora versus Castano. Just because you've got a guy who wants constant pressure applied, he being Fundora, so he could let his hands go. And he's going to be fighting, if he were to fight Brian Castano, he'd be fighting somebody who would love nothing more than to keep on applying that constant pressure. Jermell Charlo is just a hell of a boxer and an electric puncher. Like, you could argue Jermell Charlo, he moves more than Fundora or Castano or any of the other guys we're mentioning at 154, and he hits harder than all of them. That's a tough proposition. Let's see. By the way, did you guys hear about Hughie Fury and his health issues? Hughie Fury versus Michael Hunter is called off. He's basically been suffering long COVID, according to him and his team. He basically said he feels weak, and he's been feeling weak, no strength, and he sounds like he might be in some financial straits just because he, as a fighter, he needs these fights in order to get paid. And, Hughie Fury has fought good fighters. He's fought Joseph Parker. He's fought Alexander Povetkin. But this is the second time that him versus Michael Hunter will have been called off. And so, yeah, it looks like Hughie Fury, is suffering the effects of long COVID. It's just going to be interesting to see what Michael Hunter does at this point career-wise, because it seems like he's been on ice for a minute. Like, we've been talking about, well, is Hunter going to be knocking on the door of like top contenders? We've been having that discussion for a while, and it feels like he gets more fights postponed than he gets, actually realized. Just an unfortunate cancellation. By the way, are there, with the remaining time that we have, I want to actually leave it to you guys for a moment. Are there any other boxing topics that you would want me to cover and just kind of briefly discuss with you guys? Because I feel like, I don't want to keep on being the bearer of the bad news of, oh, this fight was canceled, that fight was canceled. Here, I'll say this, and this one is actually pretty exciting. Julio Cesar Martinez versus McWilliams Arroyo is added to the Juan Estrada versus Chocolatito undercard. That's good news. And again, Janibek Alim Kanuli versus Denzel Bentley, November 12th. And Senicia Estrada, the new top rank signee. She just left Golden Boy, went to top rank. She's going to be fighting on that November 12th undercard for Janibek versus Denzel Bentley. Denzel Bentley, by the way, he's a pretty good boxer, and I'm going to do a preview on that one. But he moves around the ring well. He's kind of like an unorthodox pot shotter. He throws a lot. He'll like move, throw like one uppercut at a time or one kind of sneaky, weird-looking overhand punch. But he drops his hands way too much to be hanging with a guy like Janibek. I mean, it got him knocked out. Him being Denzel Bentley, he suffered a knockout loss to Felix Cash. So I don't love his chances here. This is, by the way, Janibek's first title defense of that newly, he was just elevated to actual champ in the middleweight division. So this is going to be his first title defense against Denzel Bentley. Muhammad Shafiq has Eubank Jr. KOing Benn in 9 rounds. You know, I actually think that Conor Benn is going to go the distance there, but I would not be surprised at a Eubank Jr. stoppage. Look, I just hope that this is not one of those fights that gets made and then it becomes a, well, why was this fight ever made? I don't want this fight to result in that basically somebody gets hurt. And I feel like even though it's Chris Eubank who's dropping the additional 3 pounds to go from 160 to 157, I kind of feel like there's a reasonable likelihood that Conor Benn gets hurt. Like, look, I know that Chris Eubank Jr. isn't Triple G, so he's not necessarily going to, break Conor Benn's orbital like Triple G broke Kell Brooks. All I'm saying is, in most cases that we see of a fighter going like more than one division up, it's one thing to go up a division, but when you go up 2 divisions, like Amir Khan did Canelo, like Kell Brook did Triple G, you guys could think of other examples. What's another example of somebody going up a couple divisions and it totally not going well? I feel like we get way more cases of that than we get of, Davis somehow slaying Goliath. And check it out. If Conor Benn is able to pull this off against the significantly bigger, and if you ask me, I think Chris Eubank Jr., the bigger fighter, is quicker in terms, like hand speed wise, has faster hands than Conor Benn. That's a problem, right? If the bigger guy who hits harder, even though Conor Benn's been absolutely demolishing people at 147, I think Chris Eubank is a harder puncher. I mean, I saw Chris Eubank Jr. put a beating on former 168-pound champion James DeGale. I mean, look, Chris Eubank Jr. has been in there 12 rounds with George Groves, another former 168-pound champion. He's been in there, fought a close decision loss to Billy Joe Saunders at 160. Yeah, exactly. Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence Jr. Thank you. Benjamin Tucker, my man. Broner Maidana. So, yeah, now Broner had 1 fight in that division before Maidana, but same thing. So Broner went 2 divisions up from like 135 to 147 to first fight Paulie Malignaggi, right? And that was a super close decision win for Adrian Broner. I think I was kind of pulling for Paulie in that one. There was a lot of trash talk leading up to that fight. But then, yeah, I mean, you go from like basically the lightest puncher in the division to Marcos Maidana. I didn't think that was going to go well for Adrian Broner. And hey, Benjamin Tucker, I remember being at your mom, my aunt's Christmas party at the time, and arguing with young Dizzle about that fight. He was talking about how Adrian Broner was going to smoke Marcos Maidana. I remember telling him, like, he's going 2 divisions up, and Maidana just stopped, like, Victor Ortiz, man. Like, yeah. Worst career decision, Adrian Broner. Nah, he's made a lot of bad decisions since that. Let me. Up until that point, it was by far his worst decision. I don't think he should have been up there fighting Maidana. I think he should have played it out at 135 for a much longer time. And if anything, test the waters at 140 for a period of time. 147 was a big jump really quickly. Let's see. But yeah, look, if Conor Benn is able to beat Chris Eubank Jr., that would be a super huge accomplishment. And I simply don't think it's going to happen. And the thing is, I like Conor Benn's career so far. And I hope that this fight against Eubank doesn't derail that. But here's the thing. If, hypothetically, Broner has been gun-shy since that fight. If Conor Benn is able to beat Chris Eubank Jr., what would be a next logical fight for him? I was thinking about this. What would Eddie Hearn do with a new cash cow? Because, I mean, quite frankly, if he slays Goliath, no, he's not a champion at 147, but I'll be damned if he can't pretty much pick his shot and call out who he wants to call out and get the fight that he wants if he does beat Chris Eubank Jr. And check it out. Even if Ben loses via close decision and he loses a decision loss, it could still be a moral victory where his credibility and his stock is boosted with a competitive loss. But if he beats Chris Eubank Jr., I'm just thinking, what would be the next good fight or reasonable, logical fight from a boxing standpoint and from a business standpoint. And I was thinking, and then I came to, well, what Conor Benn versus Keith Thurman? It would either be Conor Benn versus Keith Thurman if it wasn't for that necessitating that Eddie Hearn has to work with Al Haymon PBC. So it would make sense for Conor Benn to fight Keith Thurman. I don't think PBC would be with it. So let's take Keith Thurman off the table. I think it would be Kell Brook, since Kell Brook is talking comeback, because it's almost like fighting Keith Thurman, where you're basically fighting somebody who was a top 3 147 pounder 5 years ago, right? But you're at least fighting somebody within Eddie Hearn's orbit, right? You're fighting an Eddie Hearn guy, basically. So I think that Conor Benn versus Kell Brook is like Conor Benn versus Keith Thurman, but makeable. You know, so I feel like that would be where they go after that. But Kell Brook said that he either wants the winner of Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, or he wants to fight Liam Smith. Which Liam Smith, to his credit, has had a good career resuscitation since he got stopped by Canelo. He's beaten Liam Williams for what it's worth, and he stopped Jesse Vargas recently, right? Liam Smith, he's been looking pretty good lately, I think. It far exceeded what I thought of Liam Smith. Like, he's been winning most of his fights. Benjamin Tucker said, Keith Thurman, Boots Ennis, Ortiz. So I'm almost 100% sure that he would not, that Conor Benn wouldn't fight Boots or Ortiz, because the idea wouldn't be to fight the toughest opponent if you pull this off against Chris Eubank Jr. Because it's almost like you become a superstar without having to pay your dues in your own division. You know what I mean? To become a superstar. Because it's like Conor Benn's best opponent to date is Chris Algieri. And basically that's good enough reason for me as to why he's not going to beat Chris Eubank Jr. But you go from beating who you've beaten, Chris Van Heerden, Samuel Vargas, Adrian Granados, and then Chris Algieri, to then beating Chris Eubank Jr. Again, we're talking hypotheticals here, but and I just want to be clear, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to assert himself in the first half of the fight, maybe drop Conor Benn, and then maybe take his foot off the gas, and the whole audience can like clap it up and applaud the effort for both guys in a fight that goes the 12-round distance. I could just picture Chris Eubank talking about how tough and resilient Conor Benn is, and the fact that he didn't stop Conor Benn. And then they interview Conor Benn after the fight, after interviewing Chris Eubank Jr., and then the crowd gets even louder for Conor Benn, even though Conor Benn's the guy who lost. I kind of see something like that happening, but who knows? Yeah, so I actually see Conor Benn maybe getting dropped by a jab or a left hook. You know how Chris Eubank has kind of adopted the Roy Jones style? I see Conor Benn maybe getting dropped, not hurt where you're like on your shoulder and you're having trouble getting up. Not that type of equilibrium busting knockout, but definitely stunned and basically just sat down, put on your butt by either a jab or a quick left hook. Because again, I think Chris Eubank Jr. has the hand speed advantage and certainly has much faster hands than anybody Conor Benn has fought to date. I don't know if the same is true in the reverse. Like, look, this is a mismatch, and it's a little bit funny because Eddie Hearn was saying no, Katie Taylor isn't gonna go down a division or two to fight Amanda Serrano down there, like Jake Paul's calling for Katie Taylor to do. He's saying come down and fight her at like 126 or whatever weight class. Eddie Hearn's like, no, Katie Taylor fights at this, at this weight, and that's that. She has enough trouble making this weight as is, and we're not going to put her health in jeopardy. But it's like, this is the same guy who ran Kell Brook against Triple G, and it's the same guy who's putting this fight on. Or you got Conor Benn going 2 divisions up to fight somebody else who has to come 3 pounds lower than where they sweat down to fight. It just seems a little bit hypocritical to me. But yeah, I want to thank you guys once again. So I want to thank you guys not only not only for coming to the first live chat, but since we hit that technical issue where the screen just went black just suddenly, or it might have frozen for you guys. I don't know what you guys saw. I just saw a black screen, and I knew what time it was. But thank you for coming back on the chat and chopping it up with me here. And again, like I would say within probably a couple weeks, we're going to be doing, the live chats off of another device. So this won't be a problem. So thank you guys big time for, jumping on 1 or 2 streams and staying with me through this conversation. I just love talking boxing. I love talking boxing with you guys. I like, just being analytical and just like giving like a good, sober look at different fighters' likelihoods of beating each other and, just trying to assess realistically what fights can be made versus what cannot be made. Everything, so I definitely appreciate your guys contribution, because I take away from each one of these chats and from the comments that you guys leave in the preview videos and recap videos right after some of the bigger fights. I learn a ton boxing wise from you guys. Oh, we got Las Vegas Leon in the house. Hey, check out Las Vegas Leon's Instagram, by the way. This brother has it popping. I see him at so many of the big fights, just dapping it up with the fighters and everything. Yeah, Las Vegas Leon, you doing it right, man. Thank you for coming through. Thank you absolutely for coming through. Benjamin Tucker, thank you for coming through, cousin. Love you, fam. Jay Foreman said Chocolatito versus Estrada is a blessing right now, especially with all the disappointing news. Yes. How much of a chance do you give Benn? You say 30%. I'll say 20 to 25%. I feel like he's about between 25%, like a 4-1 underdog. He should be 4-1 underdog to 5-1 underdog, something like that. I look at him as having a 20 to 25% chance, and I feel like once this fight gets going, I feel like we're going to witness one of those I feel like that's what it's going to look like. And again, I like Conor Benn, and I hope he keeps working up the ladder at 147. And I hope he doesn't just, get this huge payday and say, screw doing all the legwork. I'm looking for super fights from here on out. I hope he gets back in grind mode, basically, after this huge payday. This weird lightning in a bottle mega fight, if you will. But yeah, thank you, Muhammad Shafiq, for coming through. It's a pleasure chopping it up with you. Benjamin Tucker, Las Vegas Leon, TJ, heck yeah. Jay Foreman. Let's see. NMTK, thank you for coming through. Son of Apollo, thank you for coming through. Rod Rivas, thanks again for coming through. And when we were talking about the inconsistency in sanctioning bodies, Rod Rivas said, no organization is going to strip Canelo. It's garbage. They don't give championships with legitimate reasons. They hold their belts, unlike with Santa Cruz. Yeah, they pick and choose as an organization. It's what befits them. I feel like they're looking at it like a business the same way the promoters are looking at it like a business, which is why you get situations like, oh, it's going to be Santa Cruz versus Leigh Wood. What I think then happens, growth through calisthenics. Thank you for coming through. Peace. Yeah, thank you as always. I feel that what happens is you've got the promoter that reaches out to either the Mauricio Suleiman or to the sanctioning body, has that, behind the curtain conversation saying, I get what you're saying with Santa Cruz and Leigh Wood, but why don't we instead do this? And then they'll propose something where it involves 2 of their fighters, and it also involves that same sanctioning body. And then the sanctioning body's like, okay, well, we're still getting paid the sanctioning fee, and then the sanctioning body will reach out to Leigh Wood's people because it was Santa Cruz, Leigh Wood. And again, PBC's probably looking at that like, do we want to do business with Eddie or, Leigh Wood's people and Matchroom and worry about, is this going to be on DAZN versus our network? No, let's keep it PBC. And then I think that the sanctioning body reaches out to, Leigh Wood's people and says, why don't we do Leigh Wood versus I don't know, hypothetically, Mauricio Lara, somebody who is already in your zone, already on team DAZN, team Matchroom, team this or team that, where it's easier to make that business. Look, I wish it wasn't like that, but I'm almost starting to look at boxing like it's different leagues. Like the WBC is Bellator, and you know, even though the power dynamics are the same, because with MMA, you obviously have the UFC way up here. Everybody else is fighting for second place right here. WBC, WBA, or even, you know, when you're looking at, you know, Matchroom, PBC, Top Rank, and to a lesser extent, Golden Boy, I feel like they're all operating on somewhat even terms generally. I don't know what's happening with their accounting, with their actual financial books. But in terms of their acquiring of elite talent, I feel like they're on somewhat equal footing. So it's almost worth looking at it like 3 different leagues that don't do crossover business. So it's almost like just look at PBC boxing as its own thing, independent of Matchroom boxing. And I hate that it's like that, but it's like that, except for very rare exceptions. And I hope that that changes sooner rather than later. Muhammad Shafiq asked me what I think of the Mean Machine fight. Remind me of who his opponent was. I know that somebody had dropped it around the time we were talking about Adames Montiel. But, you know, quite frankly, I know that Mean Machine recently said that he is still 1 or 2 wins away from getting a title shot. Put it like this. If Mean Machine at 147 were to fight Stanionis right now, I think I would take Stanionis. Even though Mean Machine does bring heat, I think I would still take Stanionis. I might take Mean Machine over Butayev. I would obviously, I mean, Virgil Ortiz already beat Stanionis. Oh, Michael Fox. Michael Fox, like, you know, I get, so there's Michael Fox and then there's Alantez Fox. Alantez Fox is the one with the height, right? And Michael Fox is the one who actually got a decision win, a very controversial decision win, I believe, like a year and some change ago that he shouldn't have gotten. Or the other way around, he got robbed like a year and a half ago. Michael Fox is a pretty good fighter. Look, I don't think Mean Machine is as good as he was 2 years ago. Put it like that. I don't think that he's as punch resistant as he was when he entered the ring against Terrence Crawford. But he's really been, damn. He did look pretty bad against Ray Robinson, who at his best was a pretty good fighter as well. Oh, hit the like button. I always forget to say, please smash that like button if you haven't. I'm just not sure if Mean Machine is still operating at his peak performance level. Has he returned to the ring since getting stopped by Virgil Ortiz, or is this his first fight back? I feel like this might be his first fight back. You know what? I'm gonna go Michael Fox via decision. Ooh, that's tough. That's tough, because it's almost like feast or famine. Like, it's almost like to beat Mean Machine, you've got to stop him. There's like a little bit of that going on, just because he keeps on trying to bring the heat. But you also notice Mean Machine really slows down in the second half of fights. Like, even the fights that he wins convincingly. Now, he did stop Zuski in the 9th round in the 11th round, I believe, in a 12-round fight. He stopped him late, so there is that. Zuski also got stopped late by Ocampo, which is Fundora's opponent coming up this weekend. But yeah, this is Mean Machine's first fight back. It's going to be interesting. Like, I'm going to take Michael Fox. I'm going to take Michael Fox over Mean Machine. I would assume Mean Machine's going to be the favorite in that fight, but I'll take Fox over Mean Machine. I just feel like he can be outboxed and he could be knocked out. If you're a very good boxer, you can outbox him. And if you if you're just a slugger, I don't know how a pure slugger would do. A pure slugger might get knocked out by Mean Machine. MAW, thank you for coming through as well. Stan Tucker, yeah, thank you again for coming through. And Lisa Tucker in the house. Little sister, love you. Thank you for coming through. And MTK too, yeah. Yeah, shout out to all of you. Fernando Antiveros, thank you for coming through. Yeah, next Tuesday we're going to do this again. We're definitely, again, I'm dropping the Fundora versus Ocampo preview early tomorrow morning. And then I'm just going to start rolling out the Deontay Wilder versus Robert-Helenius. Devin Haney versus George Kambosos 2. Oh, Caleb Plant versus Anthony Durrell. That's a fun one. Yeah, I'm going to do another video on Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. It's going to be updated. And Alicia Bumgardner, or should I say Michaela Mayer versus Alicia Bumgardner. Those are going to be the next ones to come out. Shoot, in fact, I think I wrote them all down on the index card. And then I'm actually also going to do, not in the next few days, but a little bit past that, Jake Paul Anderson Silva. You got to. QT is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Thanks a ton for coming through. Jojo Diaz versus William Cepeda. That's a hardcore fight fans fight right there. Jojo Diaz versus William Cepeda. Gonna do that one too. But yeah, I always keep like a boxing calendar in my Outlook. Or no, it might even be like Google Calendar. But yeah, I just keep like the boxing calendar active. And I start saying realistically, what are the fights that I know I want to cover? And then what are the fights that I would like to get to, but might not be able to get to? By the way, if we have any music junkies in the house, I do have the What's Good Woog music channel. I just did like a rest in peace Julio, kind of going through some of his discography. And so, I've been dropping more content, just as of late with the Woog Talks music. But I am going to make absolute sure that every fight that I need to get to and want to get to on the boxing side, that we don't slow down one bit here. Because the way I see it, like, I just hope boxing continues to grow. Oh, by the way, Michael Rivera versus Jerry Perez was also announced to be on the Wilder versus Helenius undercard. But yeah, I just hope that the fights that we really want to see get made. That's my big hope for the rest of this boxing calendar, because there are some like really good fights in, November especially. Well, I mean, October's got a ton of fights as well. November's got good fights, but if we could get one of those big PBC involved fights, whether it's Spence versus Crawford or Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, I would love for one of those two to happen. And obviously, if we could get Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua, that's just the icing on the cake. I won't hold my breath, though. But yes, yeah, Spence versus Crawford is not going to happen in November at this point. They're going to have to make that for December or January. There just isn't enough lead time, both for training and for promotion at this point. But yeah, I want to thank you guys again for coming through. Can't wait for next Tuesday. Going to chop it up with you guys. And yeah, just be on the lookout. I'm going to be doing a lot of, just previews, recaps. And if I could squeeze in just maybe like a theme-based, like if more information comes out on Spence Crawford, where we have more to discuss and more to report on that's tangible, because I feel like if there is corruption going here in terms of the lack of transparency to Team Terrence Crawford from PBC, I feel like that needs to be like headline boxing news. That shouldn't be swept under the rug at all. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for coming through. Can't wait to talk to you guys soon. Peace.